Hello, everyone. Welcome to Ad Age in the Hot Seat, where we provide perspective and thought leadership on a critical topic facing the industry as a whole. I'm John Dioso, the editor of Ad Age Studio 30, and today we're going to discuss how to fix data chaos, build a lasting strategy, and save millions. In case you missed it, we're in the middle of the next great data revolution. But revolution can often devolve into chaos, and for brands, that data chaos can result in wasted ad spend. The consequences of data chaos and the subsequent missed opportunities will only be amplified in the coming cookieless world. So how can you create data harmony and enable more personalized marketing that drives results? To answer that, joining me today, we have Michael Schoen, Senior VP and General Manager of Marketing Solutions at Neustar, and Anudit Vikram.
John.
Hello, Chief Product Officer at MediaMath. Hey guys, welcome. So nothing like a little data chaos and revolution to, get us started today. Before we dive into a little bit of that, Anudit, why don't you tell us a little bit about MediaMath?
Sure. Thanks, John. And hi, Michael, and everybody else. MediaMath, well, we have the fortune of being one of the oldest DSP on record here. But if I was to define ourselves, I would say that we are a future-proof DSP who excel at delivering responsive, accountable, and performant advertising technology for brands to addressable media. And I know I use a lot of terms in there, but honestly, we are really very proud about the fact that we consider ourselves to be future-proofed. We talk a bit about it today. When we think about future-proofed, we think about it in the terms of the fact that we are inherently modular, ready for a world where customers might want to might want us to actually implement systems within their systems. We are future-proofed in the sense that we have the ability to transact natively on all these IDs that are coming out as the cookie goes away. And we are future-proofed as in we are thinking about the customers from the concept of their need for a compliant, transparent supply chain. And that's what we bring to the world via Source. We will talk a lot more about it over the time, but for now, that's who we are, MediaMath, a future DSP.
All right, great. Before we get to Michael, I just wanted to remind everybody to please shout out and let us know where you're tuning in from, wherever you are around the world. We'd love to hear from you, and any comments are certainly welcome. There you go. Thani from Pakistan. Welcome. Michael, we were in the intro, we talked a little bit about data chaos. What do we mean by data chaos? And how does that actually result in wasted ad spend? Can you give us a little bit of background on that?
Sure. So I think our perspective is, we're certainly living in very interesting times from a data perspective. It's been a trend over the last, decade that brands have started to make much larger investments in building first-party relationships directly with their consumers, including in spaces like consumer packaged goods, where traditionally there's not been a direct, one-to-one consumer relationship. At the same time as marketers have been building a lot of this first-party data, though, what's happened is the quality of that data has really devolved. And I think brands today are really facing a combination of three challenges. One is across the enterprise, marketers are often finding that there's inconsistent quality of the data, and the data about their consumers may be out of date or incomplete. They're also challenged because as they've built up capabilities over the last couple of years in terms of how they leverage this data in various marketing activities, they've often worked with multiple different providers with differing understandings of who consumers are and differing abilities to actually connect that data into the ecosystem. So what that means is that as marketers are increasingly looking to connect with consumers across multiple channels, very often, while they aimed to make those engagements very personalized and provide for a consistent experience, because those individual providers often have a different understanding of the consumer, in fact, what's happened is those conversations have often been very disconnected. And then finally, as everyone's aware, we're entering a phase in which consumers are becoming increasingly sensitive to privacy, and there are increasing regulations both in the US and worldwide around expectations around privacy. And you take these three issues together, issues with quality of the data, inconsistency in the use of that data across various channels, concerns around privacy, and that's what we mean when we refer to data chaos. And it's kind of reached a crescendo where I think most marketers today are very aware of these challenges, but are really unclear what they can do about them. And that's what we're looking to address when we talk about data chaos.
Could you hit, maybe Anudit, you can weigh in on this as well, but when you talk about wasted ad spend, so what is actually happening what are people doing wrong, in other words, that's resulting in them losing, not getting the right ROAS that they're looking for? when they're not, due to the data chaos. Anita, can you answer that, or Michael? Anita,
yeah, so actually, I would love to jump in there for a second. I mean, I think first, Michael said it really, really well about, the fact that there is there is rampant chaos when it comes to data. We have so much of data that sometimes it becomes difficult to actually make good use of it. And the term chaos itself, data chaos itself, originated mainly in the non-ad tech world, like the healthcare world and others, where there was the possibility of taking some asset and then coming up with a wrong or not correct outcome based on the use of that data asset. And when you see it, when you translate that into our world here, we actually have a similar situation where we have, the same person, for example, being identified in so many different ways because of the way third-party data could actually be created and the way a user could be identified. We see the way in which we use data to actually measure responsiveness of campaigns and measure the return on ad spend. And we find that we may or may not necessarily be getting the exact right output that we desire because the data that we have available is not necessarily the cleanest, the best, or the most efficient data that we can possibly have. And then you layer on the fact that there are so many different channels in which we now reach the consumer. We reach them on their mobile devices, on their desktops, now on their connected TVs, and a single user has a multitude of devices that we reach them in. And there are various apps, or via the browser, or via various different means, channels in which we also talk to them. Bringing it all together, offline, the online, the various channels, the connected channel, the disconnected channel, and so on, makes it even more complicated to be able to then make sure that what you are seeing as the outcome, or what you're seeing as the intended responsiveness, is actually correct or not.
So how does the coming third-party cookie deprecation affect that?
Yeah,
sure.
Yeah, happy to address. So, I think there's a general perspective in the industry that cookies and the changes related to Apple's changes with the IDFA will have a very significant impact on how brands are leveraging first-party data in the ad tech ecosystem, because historically they've been kind of critical tools for how consumer devices have been appropriately used for targeting and measurement. I think from our perspective, the thing to recognize is, first of all, that's not always the case. And in fact, Neustar's approach for how we've been helping brands leverage the first-party data has been to look for more persistent, more accurate identifiers wherever possible. So to have just a reduced reliance on those identifiers in the first place. And then just recognize that the industry is working together to identify solutions that respect consumer privacy and will provide opportunities to ensure that marketers can still execute on their core use cases. Working with partners like MediaMath, for example, we're working on additional forms of identification where consumers can provide identifiers that allow publishers to help ensure that they're receiving a personalized experience. And those integrations into the programmatic ecosystem will be part of the solution that we provide for marketers.
Can you talk a little bit more about identifiers, and then maybe Anita, you can weigh in on this as well. But Michael, just give us a little bit more about what you're talking about, because there are different solutions that are out there. There are different solutions that have been suggested or already in the works, and then Google comes along with Flock and will just announce, well, that doesn't actually work with this, with the cohort that we're trying to develop here, and that's right. Shocking news for a lot of big companies. So if you want to weigh in on that a little bit.
Yeah, well, so certainly, I mean, from my perspective, it shouldn't be shocking. And our perspective, my perspective is there's not one solution that's going to address the challenge. Again, just recognize that third-party cookies, frankly, were never a terribly good solution for the purpose they were being used for. And what we're finding is that for different types of consumers in different contexts, there'll be different approaches for ensuring that marketers have an ability to effectively target and measure the impact of those interactions. So certainly what Google has done with the Chrome Privacy Sandbox will be one of those core solutions. And we are working on how marketers will be able to leverage approaches like Flock in order to be able to target the user cohorts that the Chrome browser will be creating. We've also proposed a solution for ensuring that the capabilities of the Privacy Sandbox for measurement evolve to the point where they are really useful for enterprise marketers. It's important that when we think about measurement capabilities that were not just focused on last click measurement, but have an opportunity to really incorporate the incremental impact of marketing through a more comprehensive multi-touch attribution approach. However, there are going to be contexts in which consumers identify themselves to publishers as part of the value exchange with that publisher in order to ensure that they're receiving a personalized experience, both a content experience and an advertising experience. And the industry has developed a number of ID solutions that leverage those self-identified contexts to provide an opportunity for marketers to be able to target them effectively and in a privacy-safe way. Neustar is providing one of the solutions with our Fabric ID, which, given the breadth of authoritative data that Neustar has available, provides publishers with a higher match rate. But we're also fully integrated with the other solutions that are in market, including UID 2.0 and LiveRep ATS. All in all, our perspective is that publishers will be leveraging all of these identifiers in order to ensure that regardless of which identifier any particular advertiser might be using, they have the opportunity to maximize the match rate and effectiveness of their campaigns.
Great. And before I throw it back to Anudit, I want to just shout out some of the people who've been watching us. Like I said, we've got Tania from Pakistan. We have Brian from Virginia, Monica from Colombia, Saskia from the UK, Alex from South Africa, Suzette from California, Max and Kateri from Texas, and Tulupe, I hope I pronounced your name correctly, Tulupe from Dubai. I just want to remind everybody that this is In the Hot Seat. I'm John Dioso. I'm the editor of Ad Age Studio 30, and today we're talking about how to fix data chaos and hopefully create data harmony. And with me today is Neustar Senior VP and General Manager of Marketing Solutions, Michael Schoen, and MediaMath Chief Product Officer, Anudit Vikram. So Anudit, back to you. So from the DSP perspective, going back to the third-party cookie deprecation, how is that going to affect how advertisers have been using DSPs?
Yeah, that's a great question, and actually, it's nuanced. So I'll just walk through a few layers here. One, from an advertiser's perspective, what is important for the most part is scale, the ability to be able to reach the audiences that they want easily, and to be able to the performant inventory on which to show their ads. In the past, we've used the third-party cookie to achieve the scale along with third-party data. And so an advertiser would have access to their own first-party data, and then they would extend that audience using third-party data. And the DSP would allow them to commingle the first-party data and then find the intended audience on any of the supply sources that the DSP has access to. A few things happen when the third-party cookie goes away. One, the scale kind of drops. Michael spoke about the fact that there are these authenticated solutions where the user is essentially telling the publisher that they want to have the personalized experience that personalized targeting actually provides them. Now we have to accept the fact that all users will not be authenticated, and therefore the single biggest thing that happens with the going away of the third-party cookie is that there is going to be a slight and maybe a lot of, at least in the short term, depreciation in the amount of scale that the brands will be able to see. However, it comes with a benefit. And the benefit is, we spoke about data chaos a little while ago, where there was no guarantee as to the quality of the data that we were seeing via the third-party assets. Now, when you have a logged in authenticated user, and when you're using first-party data assets for the most part, you know that the quality of data is going to be high. So while we see that the volume might go down, we will see that the quality goes up. And as you look at technologies around, artificial intelligence and the things that can actually allow us to do more with less, we on the DSP side are pretty confident we'll actually be able to do a lot more quality work and be able to find the right kind of users for our brands and be able to provide them the value that they need. Now, on the other side, the other thing which the third-party cookie allowed us to do was it was a unifier, right? You could, irrespective of the property that you were on, if there was a third-party cookie present on that property, you would have a single unifier that could allow you to see the same user in multiple different places and basically stitch that information together. With the third-party cookie going away, the immediate thing that's going to happen is have a fragmented identity space. Neustar with its Fabric ID, and then Michael mentioned LiveRamp IDL, or Merkle with its Mercury right pool, and there are a bunch of others who are coming up with their own identity solutions. Now, while publishers might have a a single identity provider or some combination of identity providers that they work with, there is going to be this situation where the concept of identity itself will become fragmented because you have so many different identity providers that are coming into play, which will create that first-party ID, but multiple first-party IDs on each user. And now again, you have these islands of identity that are created. Where again, from a DSP's perspective, what we do in MediaMath, for example, is have the technology in place which allows us to create an identity graph that, as long as the user, the identity provider, and the brand or the publisher themselves agree, we can stitch across the various identities to create the graph. But so from a DSP's perspective, there is something that has to change to allow us to then create these graph and be able to expand out the identity set again, or defragment a fragmented identity. And then finally, when we think about the core DSP feature, it is the ability to optimize campaigns, what in MediaMath we call as the brain, which allows us to make decisions on what we should do when we see a certain opportunity or we see a user on an inventory source. Now that has to change slightly, because typically it was, a plethora of third-party IDs that would be available that get mapped into what could be a MediaMath third-party ID by itself. But now that identity, the underpinning of the identity is changing. So at MediaMath, we have changed the underlying systems to allow us to then work with these independent identities. And like I said at the very beginning of our discussion here, we have a strategy where we will allow any of the identities to be natively transacted on our platform. But that changes some things, a little bit of the underpinnings that a DSP sees. But net, when you put these three things together, a fragmented identity space, the change in the way we treat identity, and the fact that the third-party cookie the going away of the cookie will reduce scale slightly, means that we have to change the way we look at the world a little bit, and then make sure that we provide value to the brand in a way that actually makes sense in today's world. I do believe, honestly believe, that the first-party identity and the quality that the first-party identity brings will actually allow us to provide better solutions for our brands in the long run.
Yeah, I think that's great, Andy. I think you summed it up really well there. We're certainly seeing something that is going to be very disruptive in the short term to the industry. But after the last year that we've had, I'm trying hard to be super optimistic, and I think your conclusion there is exactly right. This is an opportunity for the advertising industry to kind of get it right this time, in terms of providing a solution that is both more accurate and more respectful of consumer privacy. Historically, we've kind of been drowning in data, and I think your initial point was great, which is that a little bit of good data is a lot better than a lot of bad data. So we'll pull back to less but higher quality data, and I think we've got a clear path to improving the volume of data as well. As we begin to deploy additional techniques for, in a way that is respectful of consumer privacy, being able to continue to provide personalized experiences.
Great, and for the final question, I want to go back to the theme of chaos, because it seems like Michael and Anya, that you both brought up a multitude of potential solutions and that people are using in the industry. And the number of different identifiers, for example, could come across as sounding chaotic in a way. But I just saw a show, and it's a great quote. It's something like, somebody was talking about, how anarchy was just a number of voices or a number of different perspectives, as Anya just said. But actually, isn't harmony a bunch of different voices? And it's really about how you make them all work together. So with that in mind, Michael, why don't you take this question first? How can advertisers use the move away from third-party cookies, which is top of the news right now, to create that data harmony that lead to more personalized yet privacy-compliant marketing strategies? What are your takeaways?
I think that's exactly right. So, as we were speaking at the beginning of the conversation, I think marketers clearly now recognize the problem, but are struggling with how do they address it. With Neustar's unified identity solution, we're focused on providing a comprehensive solution that addresses all three of the core components of data chaos that I mentioned earlier. First is ensuring that you have the opportunity to correct and keep up to date and enrich your first-party customer data, and ensure that the investment that you're making in building out that data and building the first-party engagement with your consumers is something that does not degrade over time. Second, provide a way of connecting that first-party data effectively across all of your marketing engagements. So rather than having that data kind of lose fidelity as it kind of passes through various stages of the ad tech pipeline, Neustar's unified identity solution provides the opportunity to leverage the same definition of a consumer, regardless of the marketing channel. And then finally, provide a solution that is respectful of consumer privacy and provides a way for you to kind of step up in terms of how you think about governance of that data. This is one of those with great power comes great responsibility situations in which if consumers are going to trust you with their data, you need to be respectful of that trust and ensure that you do not let that data leak and that you are leveraging leading techniques like differential privacy to ensure that the way that you leverage that data is safe and well governed.
Terrific. Anya, any parting words?
Well, so many, but I'll keep them to a few. I think my
we have all day.
Yeah, the 3 points that you touched on, I mean, they are absolutely critical. And I think as we look at it from the platform side, from the technology, the concept of the ID, the Fabric ID, its availability in a first-party context, both offline and online, makes it really enticing. From a platform perspective, the ability to actually make sure that we have a transparent availability of transparency in the supply chain, right? As we talk about first-party data, we know that the user that we are talking to is the user that we are indeed talking to. And at MediaMath, we talk a lot about this concept called source, which is a transparent supply chain with the tenets of being aligned, accountable, and addressable. Addressable in the sense that, to Michael's point, we have an ID, we know who the user is, and as we on the platforms target the user, we are ensuring for our brands that the user is indeed who they say they are, and therefore the user is addressable. The supply chain is accountable in the sense that there are no hidden fees, or there is no data issue or so on that we actually don't surface to the buyer and the seller themselves, and that the supply chain is aligned, which means that the buyer and the seller understand exactly what they're doing, and they share their information bidirectionally. And I think with the kind of solutions that Neustar is bringing to play, with the fact that we have, when we look at identity being the underpinning to everything that we do in the advertising technology space, getting to a point where we have these various tenets working together, I think we get to a point where we truly have harmony when it comes to being able to use data to make decisions for benefit of both the buyer and the seller.
Well, I want to thank you guys. I want to thank you to Neustar's Michael Schoen and MediaMath's Anidit Vikram for a great conversation today. I think we solved everybody's problems. There will be no further issues or anxieties going on in the advertising industry. So thank you so much. And a special thank you to everybody out there who tuned in. Have a great day, and we'll see you all soon. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.